Good evening all. Thank you for all coming along to the September meeting of the Gungahlin Community Council. Just one quick announcement. Firstly, have you all signed in the sign-in sheet at the front door? Not enough people nodding to be convincing, because we'll use that as a record of our meeting today. We have 4 speakers today. Sophie and the team from Suburban Land Agency talking about Jacket 2, Rod from AFP's Gungahlin office station. We've got an update from Barton Planning about the Magnet Mart home hardware site, and an update from CSIRO, the Gungahlin site. Just through the week, for those who don't know, the Air Towers DA, which we have been following very closely, a decision was made on Friday about that. Well, actually, it was probably made earlier in the week, but we were notified on Friday that that's been approved. It's been approved in a slightly smaller form than originally proposed. The largest tower is 18 stories, and what's been proposed is 16. But we'll write up some of the details about that and get that out in the coming week. A little bit disappointed with that, I have to say, but the planning process has been executed and a decision has been made. But on to other and exciting things. As you all know, Gungahlin is well past being a growing community. It's almost complete now, and the final stages of the final suburbs are now being executed, and one of those is Jacket 2. And from the Suburban Land Agency, we have Sophie to come lead us through that. The clicker does the clicker things, and the microphone does the microphone things.
So good evening, everyone. My name is Stacey Quayle. I'm the Development Director for Gungahlin at the Suburban Land Agency. I'm going to do a tag team with Angela Kep this evening. She's our urban designer from Roberts Day, who's preparing the estate development plan. So you might notice from this screenshot here that we're talking about Jacket 2. That's because we already have a community of Jacka in the southern area of the site that's been existing since about 2011. So this is the next stage and the biggest part of Jacka that we'll be delivering. Let's make sure I can put this. So for those of you that may not be familiar with North Gungahlin, Jacka is the red area to the north there. It's surrounded by Bonner to the east, the newly developing suburb of Taylor to the west, and Moncrief to the south. To the north are the rural lands, and further north of that is the New South Wales ACT border. We're looking at a site of about 190 hectares here. And when we have a look at it in the context of the planning scheme under the territory plan, you can actually see this area here is Jacka 1 as it exists at the moment, and the rest is Jacka 2. We've had a couple of things that have happened in the years since the structure plan and the concept plan was done for Jacka. So as you can see, it extends over to the east here. In recent years, we've had the heritage listing of 2 properties, being Horse Park Homestead here and Elm Grove Homestead to the north, which has taken them out of immediate development areas. We've also had the Gungahlin Strategic Assessment, which identified some woodland in the vicinity of Jacka that was important, which needs to be preserved. So that has now been taken out of the Jacka area as well. So what we're pretty much left with is an area to the west, which almost feels like part of Taylor, but there is a ridge line between them, and this area through here. So what we've also discovered about this site since this original concept plan was done is that there's what's called an unconfined aquifer over the site. We always knew there was wetlands down here, and we knew there was a heterodome, which is a subsurface water body that took up part of the site. But we've now discovered that there's this unconfined aquifer that takes a large proportion of the site that we can't actually build on. So what that has meant is that the yield for Jacka will reduce substantially to what was originally planned. So this is, without all that other paraphernalia on the screen, showing you what the site is. So as you can see here, Elm Grove's excluded, the woodlands excluded, but we've still got this flat area through here, which is the aquifer. What we're looking at in Jacka is probably a yield of around somewhere between 600 and 700 dwellings. The indicative land release program shows that we will be releasing from 2019 to 20, 300 dwellings that year, with 200 in each subsequent year for the following 2 years. So somewhere between 600 and 700 we're aiming for. Angela will talk you through some of the background studies and some of the characteristics of the site and how we're landing at some of the design principles for the development of Jacka.
Thanks, Stacey. We're very excited to be a part of this project. It's a really interesting site, and there's a lot of unique features at Jacka 2. In fact, we think that Jacka 2 can be and will be a 21st century model for ecological urbanism within Australia's capital city. I'll just run through this vision statement quickly, and then we'll get into the guts of it. Jacka 2 represents the unique opportunity for ecological and human habitats to not only coexist, but to thrive in a mutually beneficial environment through genuine integration. The retention and celebration of the human habitat at Jacka 2 is equally as critical as the ecological habitat. This is due to the quality, Indigenous, and European heritage of the site, as well as the commitment to the quality of life, health, and well-being of the future Jacka 2 community. The community will also be stewards of the cultural and environmental values of the site, promoting education, awareness, and integration. Innovation at Jacka 2, which is quite critical, will be driven by environmental, community, education, and government partnerships, and a significant commitment from all of us to next practice master plan design and implementation. That vision was not created or established in isolation. It was prepared, I guess, based on very in-depth and a multidisciplinary understanding of the site. And that's the physical features of the site, but it's also really the place attributes of the site. So what we're talking about there is really understanding the DNA of Jacka 2, what makes it special. And we want to take that unique DNA and we want to retain it, we want to celebrate it, and evolve it into a design brief, but also into a future community and a holistic experience for residents and visitors. So the next few slides I'll take you through are some of our key observations in terms of those place characteristics and how we have responded to those through the design brief. So it's pretty unique, Jacka 2. It's not very often that you get to a site and it's already multimodal before you even touch the ground. So we've obviously got a site at Jacka 2 which is private vehicle and bus ready. We've also got footpath and cycle links that exist in the adjoining suburbs, including Taylor, that are ready to link into. And we've already got the equestrians kissing the peripheries of the Jacka 2 site with the bicentennial trail. So it's pretty obvious to us that active travel and active transport is going to be critical to this project. But it's not just about extending the pedestrian paths, and it's not just about filling the gaps for the cycle infrastructure. It's about considering things like end-of-trip facilities. It's about thinking about where this bus stop is going to exist so that people can wait for the bus with a little bit of dignity, but also in the middle of a real place that's safe and that's active. That's really
places to park the horse.
Sorry. Actually, my third point, something I prepared earlier, we actually want to think about places where you can bring a horse to water and literally allow it to drink. So you're exactly right. There are opportunities to interact humans and horses and nature. I guess building on that, it's obviously a connected community. Stacey has talked about those regional connections, about the proximity to the existing services and amenities of the suburbs surrounding it. And we're also literally on the doorstep to nature. So it's a very well-connected area. But with this great access and connectivity comes a great responsibility as well to deliver diversity. So we will be delivering a diversity of lifestyle and of housing at Jacka 2, and it'll be the full spectrum. So you'll get some bigger lots with your detached housing, and the whole spectrum all the way through to some more compact offerings. And what we're talking about there is, maybe some low maintenance offerings for people who love this area but are looking to downsize. little low maintenance. We're also looking at opportunities for young families and first-home buyers to get their foot in the door. And this is really an acknowledgement that the Australian dream, it's changing. It's a bit different now, and we need to deliver for that, cater for that. The trees on the Jacka site. Don't know how many of you have been out there, but the trees are absolutely stunning. Whether it's a single tree sort of as a sculptural element in the landscape or whether it's a scenic clustering, it's absolutely stunning. It adds an instant maturity and an identity to Jacka 2 that's incredibly unique. So it's been very important for us to retain trees on site. And that's not just on the bits of undevelopable land sort of outside of the community. We've actually looked at strategic and rational locations within the developable area to retain those trees. And we think it'll be pretty special. We're very proud that this tree retention has been a significant driver of our design process, and that we're keeping 100% of the exceptional trees and almost 70% of the high quality trees. Hilltops, there's a number of sort of hilltops and knolls within the Jacka 2 area and the surrounding area. I guess from our perspective, this is important in two ways. In our design, we want to make sure that we're maintaining and creating visual axes that connect you to those hilltops, because that gives us legibility. Secondly, those hilltops should be retained as public open space. And that's important because it doesn't matter what your age or your ability or your socioeconomic level, you should be able to access the best bits of Jacka 2, and that's these great hilltop elevations. The aquifer, Stacey's touched on, it's pretty interesting, it's unique, and we want people that live and visit Jacka to ask questions about this thing. What does it mean? What does it do? And I think the best way to do that is to make sure water is celebrated within Jacka 2. So whether it's a pond and a basin that we enjoy and have our coffee next to, or whether it's the way that we express the water within water-sensitive urban design and innovative landscape and irrigation techniques. Elm Grove, again, Stacey touched on, this sits outside of our study area, but we think it's important still to respect the history that exists at Elm Grove and look for opportunities to weave the story of that site into our awareness, education, and interpretation through the site. Building on this, the Horse Park Homestead and its associated wetlands, which Stacey talked to, even more so. You know, we're definitely looking for interpretation. We're looking at opportunities for art trails to tell the story of this homestead and the wetlands. But there's also an opportunity to look at boardwalks. There's an opportunity to look at a cultural hub or a multi-purpose community facility here. This could be, as I said, for the community. This could be a museum that documents the history. It could be a place where you monitor and study the ecological aspects of Jacka 2. The grasslands. This is quite a unique observation because it's these beautiful golden grasslands. The entire site shines. But in addition to that, it also gives it movement and it makes the site very dynamic. So that's something we want to make sure we hold on to at Jacka 2. That movement and that vibrancy and the idea that you want to stay and play here. I mean, you have to leave your house to go to work very often, but wouldn't it be great if when you get home, you park your car, you park your bike in the garage, and that's it for you. You get to stay and play the rest of your evening or your afternoon or your weekend at Jacka. It means you grab your bottle of wine and you go up to the hilltop and have a picnic, or you grab the kids and the dog and you go for a bushwalk, or you grab your favorite book and go have a coffee next to the water. This is the idea of staying and playing at Jacka. And we believe that the public domain and the infrastructure should reinforce this. It should be safe, it should be golden, it should be interesting, and it should be attractive. So with all of that in mind, we went away and we realized that Jacka 2 could not all be painted with the same brush. There's a number of unique characteristics and sub-precincts within Jacka 2. So we've identified these within this plan. Just quickly running through these, conscious of time. The mixed-use center, which is the red bit in the middle, that's really the convergence of all of these sort of movement and multimodal systems. This is really the heart of Jacka 2. It's next to the open space, and it's going to be overlooking some feature basins. The next is the park front character area. Now, really, most of these blocks of land will have park frontage, but these are special lots that have a formal and very intimate sort of interface with the parks and the open space. The wetland interface is pretty obvious. The collector. So these are the gray blocks that front the entry road. This is quite important because these will contribute really to the brand and the arrival experience at Jakatu. With nature on the west and development to the east, it will create a sequence I think that's quite important to Jakatu. And then there's the light pink areas, which is really the traditional residential fabric of Jakatu. So quickly running through these character areas, the mixed use center. We are looking at some mixed-use boutique apartments in this area. So they'll have residential above, and then you'll have some community and retail uses on the ground floor, north-facing, overlooking the water bodies, and engaging with the wetland system. There'll also be an east-facing aspect that looks onto more of an urban plaza. This is where the bus stop will be. This is where the activity will really happen. There'll be a range of different housing types, as I said before. There'll be some more small-scale apartment offerings. There'll also be, probably the majority of the built form will be terraces. And we're talking more 2 to 3 story terraces here, so more high-end terraces as a product offering and a lifestyle offering. The park front, as we said before, in most cases, you're getting houses which are fronting directly onto open space in these areas with vehicular access to the back. These are often park areas that have been created specifically to retain clusters or spectacular trees that we thought deserved a park around. The rest of the parks will be a combination of very naturalistic clustering of parks and adventure play, and also some more sort of formal green spaces. The traditional fabric that we talked about, this is going to be sort of your larger houses. This will be some of your smaller cottage products. There'll be some terraces here as well. But there will be a fair bit of slope within this area, which means you're going to get some great views and vistas out over Jacka and beyond. It also creates some opportunity for some more of that sort of nature play that reflects the existing character of the site. The collector area, as I discussed before, this really is going to be about the brand and the identity and welcoming people home to Jacka. The wetland edge. This is really going to be, I guess, where we sort of touch the ground lightly. It's going to be a bit more sensitive. Less earthworks in this area, more engagement with nature, and a real celebration of the wetlands. So that's really our plan for Jacka at the moment in a nutshell. We think it's going to be a really unique place. It's going to be a really lovable place. It's going to be a place for people to come together, and I guess for people and nature to come together in a really healthy way. I'm obviously not going to read through all of this. I just wanted to touch on some of the key objectives for Jakatu. And that really is about this idea of a healthy community. And that's healthy for the residents, physical, active, outdoor, green health, but it's also about the social well-being that comes with diversity and community gathering. And it's very much about the health of the ecological systems. So it's about that stewardship, and it's about people taking pride and ownership in nature that they exist within. I'll close it out there, and is there any questions?
I've certainly got questions from the audience. Any questions from the audience? Don't forget to grab the microphone. Okay. You mentioned that it's bus ready. Jacka, in its current form, has been a bit of a black hole for buses in Gungahlin. So how is it bus ready? Is it bus ready then you'll make provision for a bus? And how can we be sure that Transport Canberra will follow your bus readiness with an actual bus?
Yep, fair enough. When I was talking bus ready, I was sort of talking that there's buses sort of in the outskirts leading into it. There's also a bus stop planned for the center right here. So we've been working with TCCS, and we've been working with Active Travel and buses to make sure that A, we know where that bus stop needs to go, and B, that we make sure we've designed in a way that can accommodate that. So we've been getting into quite detailed, I guess, design.
Okay. Yeah.
But also in addition to that,
microphone. Either come to that microphone or use this microphone. Otherwise, people remotely can't hear.
exactly. In addition to that, the staging of the estate is also, you'll see the collector road that runs through the middle. Everything to the south of that will be stage 1, and that road will be provided as part of stage 1. So it will then connect back into Taylor and the bus route that's going to operate from there. So it will be ready for action to be able to service that site as soon as we've finished our civil works in there.
Thank you for that. It's Damien Haas, the Public Transport Association of Canberra. in Casey, the Casey shops have been finished for some time. Casey itself has got quite a substantial population, yet it's had no bus service until Network 19 plan, which is going to be introduced next year. When you say bus ready, I really think you need to be, planning properly, and not just putting a bus pad, but building a proper bus shelter for people, and then encouraging Transport Canberra to actually service the area. Now, Riverview, who are developing Gin and Dairy, are actually paying out of their own pocket for a bus to run from their first development of Strathman to the Kippax interchange from day one when the first residents are moving in. It's interesting that a private developer can do that, yet the Suburban Land Agency can't. I think maybe there needs to be a little bit more effort done on reducing car dependency. When you're encouraging people to move in, forcing them to drive is not really an attractive thing.
Any comments?
I need to say that we are working with Action, and the conversations are there about early provision of those bus services into the estate. I think the benefit that we will have here is that Taylor will be completed and they will be doing the loop around Sutherland Crescent, and for them to pop up, I can't remember what the name of it is, but the collector road that comes up through Taylor and then through Jacka won't actually be too much of a stretch to their network or add too much time to a particular route. So that's the feedback we're getting so far. So
build a proper bus.
Yep.
Build a proper bus facility instead of just a pad with a bus sign, I think.
As Angela has said, particularly in that centre area, we're very cognizant of where that bus stop should be so that it is part of the centre and so that we can provide a safe, attractive place for people to wait for the buses rather than just being stuck out on the side of the street. So it is at the forefront of our minds.
Just building on that, I think you're exactly right. Car dependence, we have to do a lot to reduce that. And one of the things is you can't feel like second-class citizen if you're waiting for the bus. It has to be an attractive proposition. And
or you'll take a horse.
Well, exactly. At least you've got a horse.
Yep, Henley.
So you said Jacka is a unique suburb, which is correct because that's the only suburb they don't have bus, which is unique in a way. But I hope the Jacka 2 doesn't have that kind of uniqueness, probably something compatible in, where people can catch transport and stuff. My question is, you showed like a lot of apartments in Jacka, like a kind of a mini town center where you have a lot of apartments and stuff. So is it the entire suburb that's going to be like that, or what's the size we're looking at? Because you touched about the Australian dream. When I looked into last time, the Australian dream is to have a big backyard, but we are running out of those things now. So I just need to know what's the standard size and how many apartments we're looking at and those kind of things. Thanks.
Yeah, so sorry, the photos might have been a bit deceiving. That was just about this character area. So the only place the only place we're looking at apartments at the moment are here, which is literally right in the center. This is also a multi-unit site. The balance around the center are terraces through here. The rest of the suburb is looking to be larger lots. So we're talking between, the 350 all the way up to 600 and potentially 800 square meters. So we're looking at the full gamut of diversity here. And as far as the Australian dream goes, agree with you that the Australian dream has traditionally been, those larger lots. But I think people are starting to change that dream a little bit, first out of need, because everything is so expensive at the moment, and also just out of, I guess, a changing demographic. So there are still people who dream about exactly what you're talking about, and there are other people that dream about coming home and not having to mow their lawn. And they dream about having access to a park that they don't have to maintain and someone else does. So I guess that's what we're talking about in terms of that evolution of the Australian dream.
Thank you. You mentioned the Centennial Trail. Any plans to provide access into the Centennial Trail from Jacka, noting that at the moment there is actually a fire trail already there. It's just got a nasty cranky sign on it saying it's private property, which it isn't. It's actually ACT leasehold, but that's a different conversation.
So absolutely, we're looking at those connections, just like we have done in Taylor. The fire trail that we're putting around the north of Taylor will link with the Centenary Trail. Okay. Similarly, here in Jacka, it will also link. So as you say, that area just north of Elm Grove, that is an old eucalyptus plantation that isn't needed for harvesting anymore. So we're working with the Parks and Conservation Service to see what opportunities we can provide for linkages through that site, but perhaps not even just linkages, possibilities for a mountain bike facility there to provide those connections. Because we would love people from the Centenary Trail to drop down, come and have a coffee.
That's what I'm thinking.
And then head on and do whatever else they're doing with their day.
I've had a chat with the mountain bike person who, good. You've also got quite a substantial sporting area complex there. Is that going to come with a toilet block, all the other facilities, or is it really just a bunch more ground? And is that something that they call Active Canberra look after?
It's Active Canberra. So what we do in preparing the State Development Plan is make provision for a range of land uses. One of those is the district sport playing fields here, which Sport and Recreation have advised they require. The timing of that will be sometime in the future because, of course, they have to go through their Treasury bids for that. As I understand it, any of these sorts of facilities will have the pavilions and change rooms associated with them and car parking. In the interim, until they decide to develop this for sporting fields, we're going to make sure that that's still a usable area so that people that want to go and kick a ball around or play some informal sports have that space to be able to do that.
Cool. Great. Andrew, hang on.
You just spoke about how you have residences going to be backing on to parklands. I looked there and I see 95% has a ring road around it, with very few actually backing on in any way to a parkland.
So, sorry, I'll see if I've got a loud enough voice. So there's certain things that we're doing here. There is a provision from bushfire perspective that we need to provide edge roads around the estate so that the fire service has a point to fight any potential fires. And this is on the northwest frontier of Canberra, so it is an extreme fire risk in this area. So particularly when you're looking up north and you see those edge roads, we're required by legislation to have those. But there are a couple of opportunities on the site where we don't actually need to provide that edge road because the fire risk is a little bit lower. So I don't know whether you noticed them when Angela was pointing out.
Yeah.
Those are the opportunities, and they don't back on. We're going to have them fronting onto the open space. So there'll be certain provisions relating to those blocks about how they address that open space, so they're not just turning their backs on it.
All right. Any other final questions? And that's all coming to market in early 2019?
2019 is when the land release program says we have to release, so it's probably going to be somewhere in the middle of that financial year.
So that's 2019-20. So that's middle of that's calendar year, end of 2019.
Probably towards the end of next year. Yep.
Cool.
So, Peter, just one final question. Do we know the rates at this stage? Like what the
land
rates?
Yeah. No, because we don't have any valuations at this point. We don't even actually have it firmly set down.
Okay.
The design
do we know,
yet.
like how many affordable houses going to be there? Public housing.
There will be public housing there, and there will be.
Sorry, I'll just
housing.
rephrase my question so people know. I was just asking about the affordable housing and the public housing and stuff.
So as you may be aware, the government each year sets a target for affordable housing provision. In the past, it's been 20% blanket in each estate. Now they're setting a numerical target for each estate. They haven't done that yet for Jacka, but what we are looking at in providing that diversity of built form is to be able to provide those opportunities for people to enter into the market at different stages. And one of those will be to be able to meet those benchmarks. I don't have a figure at this point because we haven't finalised all of our design there. But I don't know, I'd guess maybe we might be looking at about maybe 10-12% affordable housing here. And a proportion of that will be public housing as well.
Have you made provision for not turning our streets into parking lots? Because in many of the areas where there's high density, the streets actually turn into parking lots. And I'm just wondering what sort of things you're trying to do to address that problem.
So the question was about on-street parking, and where we have the higher density development not turning the street potentially into a parking lot. Do you want to respond to that question?
So I think most critically is that this isn't going to have a lot of high density. It is really just in that center bit that we're going to have apartments. But the other thing is we're going to make sure that we've got appropriate levels of resident and visitor parking within the actual development. The on-street area in particular around this village center will be very much, I guess, there will be on-street parking, of course, but it will be very much focused on street tree planting and sort of the bus stop and things like that. So this is very much about a people street and a people area, and it's about pushing that parking sort of out.
Cool.
But there is a requirement under the territory plan that we have to provide so many on-street parking spaces for certain size blocks of land.
Cool. All right. Any other last questions for Damien?
Regarding the aquifer, I guess you said that's recently been discovered. Has there been extra engineering works around in some of the recently established suburbs to prevent any sort of contamination of the aquifer from whatever source?
From here, we've mapped the extent and we know that it is fed from land upstream, so up in the rural lands. It's not coming from the adjacent areas, so I'm going to have to move around. There's a ridge line that goes up through here, so all of this goes that way. All of this goes that way. It's only this top section that actually comes down through here.
Okay.
So we've got our engineers looking at how we manage the aquifer, and part of that management process will be a series of ponds that will be provided up there. And they're not just your typical ponds, stormwater detention basins that you have in other estates. They've got to be designed in a certain way that manages that flow so that the aquifer is still getting the same quantity of flow, but also the same quality of flow. So the specifications for nutrients may be a little bit higher than what they have been in other suburbs. What we also need to have a look at in this suburb is under the territory plan, there's the provision, there's the requirement that you reduce your potable water demand by 40%, and people typically do that by installing a rainwater tank on site. We're doing some modelling at the moment to see what impact that would actually have on the aquifer, because it may be that we need that water that's coming off your roofs to go into the aquifer rather than being captured on site and reused in the house.
Cool. All right, we all done for questions? Yeah. All right. Thank you very much. Really exciting. Looking forward to when all of that information comes online. It's really cool. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so
All
much.
right, thank you. Our next speaker is Rod from the AFP's Gungahlin station. Give us an update on crime statistics and public safety situation in Gungahlin. Just with the mic, would be good.
I don't have a colourful presentation, so.
Just trying to think, do I want to...
The trees was.
Trees and also, I can't do trees.
You can turn it off, yeah.
There we go.
Thanks again for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. For those people who are not aware, my name's Rod Anderson. I'm the officer in charge at Gungahlin Police Stations. I'm responsible for the policing services that get delivered to Gungahlin, and I've been there for a few years now. Last time I spoke to this meeting, which I think was the end of last year, we talked about what sort of statistics or what sort of information you wanted to hear. And what I did was compare a month to a month to sort of give an indication of where our crime was occurring and whether we were seeing an increase or decrease, and then just had a general discussion about some of the things that we've seen over the previous few months. So I thought I'd do the same thing. There was again a particular interest in the suburb of Moncrief and some discussion around some crime that's been occurring there. The discussion's been on social media, and I can probably talk to some of those without getting into specifics. When I look at property offences, so things like burglaries, stolen motor vehicles, there has been a slight increase across Gungahlin. between July and August, but things like assaults and thefts have actually seen quite a reduction. Now, there's many reasons for some of those things. During the winter months, Canberra, interestingly, bucks the national trend in terms of the number of stolen motor vehicles, where the number of stolen motor vehicles actually increases over winter, where across Australia it actually decreases. I mentioned earlier, one of the reasons for that is that people leave their cars unattended to warm them up in the morning to defrost them, and lo and behold, opportunistic thieves come along and steal their cars. And it's quite unique to Canberra. Another unusual sort of crime trend that's crept in is crooks are breaking into houses for the purpose of stealing cars, not for stealing property from within or doing anything else, but stealing the keys so they can take your cars. So one of the messages again I'd say tonight is put your keys somewhere where it's going to be less obvious if someone actually gets in, particularly if you've got a high-end, high-value vehicle that our crooks are after. When I look at the statistics in relation to Moncrief, there is very little criminal activity occurring in that suburb compared to nearly all the suburbs across Gungahlin and the rest of the ACT. For example, there was only 3 burglaries reported in July and 2 in August. And any burglary or any time someone breaks into a house is too many. But those statistics are a lot lower than some of the other suburbs across Canberra. Our policing activity across Gungahlin increased during August, where we attended nearly 900 incidents compared to about 800 in July. In relation to Moncrief specifically, we had a community meeting organised by Mingle over at Amaru School last week with the residents, a lot of residents from Moncrief, and they were concerned about some reports of people breaking into houses when the residents were actually there. Without going into too much detail, those crooks were actually apprehended interstate, and they weren't from Canberra. They were actually here and in the suburb sort of visiting some acquaintances, and they were since apprehended. But it wasn't the case that there was a crime spree going on. They'd broken into 2 houses within a short amount of time. The other thing we discussed at last week's meeting was the value of Crime Stoppers and reporting information that you have and how you can do that. And Crime Stoppers, the Crime Stoppers number, which is 1800 333 000, can be reports to that can be made anonymously. They can also be made online, and it could be that little piece of information that links into something else that we already know about or that someone else has provided. That means that we either apprehend someone, we detect and prevent further offences, and also return property that might have been stolen. Neighbourhood Watch also spoke about the value of just knowing your neighbours, and in Moncrief and a lot of the developing suburbs,